To Canberra, where Shadow Defence Minister Angus Taylor is speaking about the US Pentagon's review into the Aukus agreement.
It has strong bipartisan support, and it is the centrepiece of our defence strategy in this country. We have been consistent in providing bipartisan support to Aukus, and we will continue to. It is hugely important that it succeed for us, for peace in our part of the world, and for ensuring that we have the strong ADF that is necessary in this country, and we have the strong allies and coalitions, of course, in the defence area. As I said, this US review came out of the blue, and there are very serious questions that the government and the Defence Minister needs to answer about it. First of all, when did the government become aware of the review? Richard Marles has said they were aware. They've been aware of it for some time. We need to know the details of that. We need to know to what extent was the review triggered by Labor's failure to fund defence in this country to the level that the US and other partners think is appropriate. And we've been clear, and we were clear at the last election, that 3% of GDP is necessary to ensure that we don't end up with what ASPI has described as a paper ADF. Was the government's position on sanctioning two Israeli ministers a contributor to triggering the timing or the existence of this review in the first place? What are the terms of reference of the review? What will it cover? Is it actually questioning the existence of Aukus in the first place, or just the operation of it? We need to understand those details. Is Labor prepared to increase defence funding to support Aukus if that is one of the outcomes of the review? When will the Prime Minister meet with the President, with President Trump, to discuss this face to face? We understood there was a meeting that was going to proceed. That is less clear now. It is hugely important that the Prime Minister meet with the President to discuss this. Finally, what role will we play, Australia will play, in this review? Is this one that's being driven unilaterally by the Americans, or indeed are we going to play a role in it? Now, I've been clear in the short time I've been in this role that we need an ADF that is able to deliver, is focused on readiness, not just rhetoric, is agile, is able to respond in a world which, as the Prime Minister has put, is more dangerous than any other time since the Second World War. And we know agility matters more than ever. We've seen that in conflicts around the world. We need an ADF that is able to stand on its own 2 feet, that has sovereign capability and uses that strength as a basis for strong alliances and strong coalitions across the world. We need an ADF that has the people necessary to do the job. And it's clear, since Labor has been in power, that our ADF is well short on their own goals, on Labor's goals for the number of people we should have in it. We need more than a paper ADF. If Aukus falls over, we will all pay a heavy price for it. The Coalition stands ready to work with Labor to make sure that Aukus is a success. It needs to be strong and it needs to be effective, but bipartisanship will not be a shield for inaction. Bipartisanship will not be a shield for inaction. We need an effective AUKUS, we need an effective ADF, we need a strong ability and capability in this country to defend ourselves, as I say, at a time that, as the Prime Minister has put, is more dangerous than any other time since the Second World War. Happy to take questions. We'll start with, if we can start with defence questions, please.
Yes, Mr. Taylor, just on 2 of those points that you made, you talked about questions of if we should boost defence funding if AUKUS kind of falls over or gets decreased. Can I be clear? Is that your view? Should that happen? And secondly,
sorry, just be clear.
You said the question needs to be asked.
Yeah.
If AUKUS falls over or is changed, will we increase defence funding?
Okay.
I want to be clear if that's your view that should happen.
Yep.
And secondly, you talk about this meeting. That's not been confirmed that they will meet on the sidelines of the G7 next week. If that doesn't happen, is that of concern that meeting doesn't take place?
Yeah. So on the first one, we took to the last election a commitment to raise defence spending to 3% of GDP. I think that's necessary. We think that's necessary. And there's no shortage of areas where there needs to be extra resources. I mean, this is a government that has completely failed to deliver on the northern bases that they committed to. It's a government that has failed to deliver on sovereign missile capability that was promised. It's a government that has failed to deliver on the targets for the number of people we have in the ADF. So it is clear we have a real challenge here. It's also clear from what experts are telling us, like ASPI, that the risk here, if we don't increase defence spending, is that AUKUS will cannibalise other parts of the ADF that are necessary, like sustainment. So getting this balance right is hugely important, and that's why we took the position we did to the last election, and that's why I'll continue to prosecute the case for that. On your second question, the meeting between the Prime Minister and the President, I think at a time like this, when AUKUS is being reviewed, it is hugely important that there be face-to-face engagement between the Prime Minister and the President. This is, well, it should happen as soon as possible. It should happen as soon as possible. And I think that is very, very important on many fronts. I mean, it's not just in terms of defence. Clearly, defence is a very high priority, but also more broadly on the broader set of economic issues we're facing. We'll just keep moving around the room.
As you mentioned earlier, it was a coalition which pivoted the submarines deal to AUKUS from the French. If this goes pear-shaped, does the coalition have to shoulder any of the blame for that decision?
Our goal is to make sure we do our bit to ensure it doesn't go pear-shaped, and the government should do its bit to make sure it doesn't. Now, you know, I note that the Americans have said just in the last week that Labor is underfunding defence in this country. It should be at a higher level. Pete Hegseth has said that. And, you know, one of the big questions here is that one of the reasons why the United States is concerned? Are they concerned? Well, they clearly are concerned about it because they've said it, but has that helped to trigger this review and the timing of this review? I think these are questions that need to be answered by the Defence Minister.
Mr. Taylor, should Australia conduct its own review of AUKUS like the UK has done and now the US?
Well, I tell you what Australia needs to do. It needs to have an ADF that can serve us as is necessary in the most dangerous times since the Second World War. And that means an ADF focused on readiness, not just rhetoric, an ADF that is agile, an ADF that can stand on its own 2 feet and use that strength to form strong alliances with the United States and others, including AUKUS, and an ADF that has the people necessary to defend our nation. And those are things that should be constantly under review by the government because they are failing to meet their own goals on these things. I mean, they promised sovereign missile capability. They've promised more people to the ADF. We haven't seen those outcomes. They've promised the northern bases, and we haven't seen these things. So that I tell you what, that needs to be reviewed by this government constantly.
Just on Lucy's question, should there be a review of AUKUS in Australia?
Well, I think AUKUS needs to succeed, and the government needs to do whatever. Well, you know, I'm not into bureaucratic processes. I'm into outcomes, and I want to see the outcome. And this is the problem with this government: it's all rhetoric and no readiness. Where's the delivery? It's all talk. I mean, they talk about sovereign missile capability. They talk about the northern bases. Where are the outcomes? I'm an outcomes guy. And that's what we need to see from this government. We're not seeing it. And if to the extent that, you know, resourcing is part of the issue there, which I think it is, they need to deal with that, and they haven't. David. Yeah.
Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth and others have all expressed support for AUKUS. Elbridge Colby, senior Pentagon official, is the one who's been raising concerns and clearly driven this review. He's concerned about the capacity to build enough Virginia-class submarines in the US. My question to you, should Australia be prepared to tip even more into the US industrial base to keep AUKUS alive?
Well, I mean, let's see what comes out from this review, David. But I think what is very clear is that Australia needs to do its bit. We need to have both sovereign capability and alliance capability. We need to make sure AUKUS is a success, both Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. I mean, I think Pillar 2 is hugely important, but where's the serious commitment to that? Where's the serious commitment to that? Where's the serious commitment to drone and counter-drone technology?
More money being invested.
Well, you know, we think more money needs to go to defence in this country. That is our position. The balance across all the things I've been talking about, there's no shortage of candidates for that resourcing. Between that and Aukus needs to be struck in the right way. So we're open to work with the government on this, and we've been clear about that all along and will continue to be.
Mr Taylor, as you've mentioned, Richard Miles said this morning that the government did know about this for some time, but you've also questioned whether the decision yesterday, or the sanctions on Israel yesterday, 24 hours ago, were a factor in this. It can't be both, can it? The government's known about it for some time, but the review was influenced by something that happened 24 hours ago. And if that was indeed the case, wouldn't it be more of a concern that the US was potentially looking to horse trade sanctions for AUKUS, looking to coerce Australia's decision on that matter?
Well, these are all questions to Richard Miles. They're good questions, by the way. I think you're asking excellent... You're asking very good questions, and I think they're questions you should ask of Richard. I mean, I've outlined those questions, and I think it's important that we get answers on all of those things. Now, the truth is, many things could have triggered this review. I've outlined some of the things that might have triggered the review. As you said, David, there's obviously different views within the United States, the administration, and you know, these things can happen through triggers that happen on the day. So, I mean, I don't know the answers to these questions, but I tell you what, we deserve answers to them. I should say, by the way, that I would strongly welcome a briefing on this, to the extent that there's private discussions that have happened that the Defence Minister and others are prepared to share with the coalition in order that we can work on a bipartisan basis on this. But that's certainly not something that's been offered today.
Mr Taylor,
yeah, no. Well, hang on, we'll just keep going around. No, what's next?
Anthony Albanese secures...
Hang on.
Sorry.
Okay. Just on the talk of increasing how much we're spending on defence by an amount of GDP, what do you actually want that to go to? Are we talking offence or defence broadly?
Oh, I see. Yeah, look, it's a range of things, clearly, and I've outlined some of those already. And, you know, we're seeing a real change in agility in the way defence forces across the world are working. I mean, for instance, it is clear now that drone and counter-drone capability is more important than we had understood just a few short years ago. We need to be making an appropriate level of investment in that, including through Pillar 2 of AUKUS. I mean, these are areas where there needs to be serious investment, there needs to be serious innovation, there needs to be serious agility. Now, we have extraordinary companies here in Australia who are working in those areas, and I've been privileged enough to spend time with a number of those companies before I got into this role, and I've been talking with some of them even since I've been, at the short time since I've been in this role. And the combination of local and international capability in these areas is something we need to harness, and we need to harness it quickly because, as the Prime Minister says, these are much more dangerous times than we've seen, certainly in our lifetimes. Yeah, we'll keep going.
If Mr Albanese secures that meeting on the sidelines of the G7 with Donald Trump, and there are doubts over whether Trump may even attend that meeting, what does he need to walk away from for the coalition to see it as a win, not just on defence but on trade as well?
Well, I mean, clearly we want AUKUS to be successful, and we need steps in that direction. And a face-to-face meeting between the Prime Minister and the President can be a step in that direction. That's what we'd like to see. More broadly, of course, I mean, you know, we want strong economic ties between the United States and Australia. They've been important to us both in terms of trade and investment and people for a long, long time, and we want to see that continue. And I mean, look, we have a lot in common with the United States. We don't agree with them on everything, but we have a lot in common, and so there's a lot to work together on, both economically and in terms of national security and international security. Yeah.
On the issue of money, if the Virginia-class submarines are not sold to Australia... If are not sold to Australia, would you call on Washington to return the money for their industrial base that we're sending over, or is that just more money the Australian taxpayer will have to say goodbye to?
Well, maybe it's because I'm overly optimistic, but I'm optimistic we can keep AUKUS on track, and we will stand ready to work with Labor to do exactly that. So I'm not going to get into those alternative scenarios. The job now is to make AUKUS a success, and I think that is incredibly important to our country. It's been bipartisan. It will remain that way as long as Labor remains committed to AUKUS, and we must do everything necessary to make it successful. Yeah.
Mr Taylor, in your statement you say, you don't project strength by undermining alliances. Australia must show it's serious, consistent and committed on AUKUS. Isn't the same challenge to the United States? Alliances go both ways?
Yeah, of course. And that's why face-to-face engagement, that's why the Prime Minister meeting with the President to discuss these things and having an open line where we understand each other and are working closely with each other is so important. I mean, you know, personal relationships really matter in these things. And so this is hugely important. But through AUKUS, we are contributing much to the United States too. I mean, this is an important point. By having a submarine presence here in Australia, in Western Australia, that's the plan, this is extremely valuable to the United States. And so, yep, it's a two-way street. Absolutely right. But you know what? We've had two-way streets with the United States for a long, long time. And they have been very, very successful, and they can continue to
Would you be critical of the US if the review leads to them pulling out of AUKUS?
Well, you know, again, we can come up with all the hypotheticals you like. Our commitment will be, and it's a commitment I make to Richard Marles right here and now, bipartisanship to AUKUS to make it successful. That's what we want to see.
Scott Morrison has today warned against overreacting to this review and said that it's within America's remit to undertake one. Are you overreacting? Is it within the US's remit?
Well, I think I'm asking a whole lot of questions that need to be answered. Of course we want AUKUS to succeed. Scott Morrison, I know, wants AUKUS to succeed. I do. And I certainly hope that the Defence Minister does. So we will do whatever necessary on our part to make it a success. But I think there are some serious questions to be answered here. Yeah.
The National Defence Strategy is reviewed biannually. It happened last year, isn't due until 2026. Given the requests from the US, should Richard Marles do a review straight away, haul in the CDF and look at how we are spending and whether we should increase it?
Yeah, I just think this is a government that needs to focus on delivery. It's a government that needs to focus on more than just rhetoric. It needs to focus on readiness. It needs to focus on capability. It needs to focus on people, on sovereignty. And that's what, more reviews. I mean, what we've seen from this government is endless reviews in this area. Endless reviews. Readiness counts. Delivery counts. It's not rhetoric is not the answer when it comes to securing our nation and keeping it safe. And so we need to see more than just reviews. We need to see outcomes. Yeah.
You raised a few hypotheticals regarding whether this is a result of Labor's defence spending, the Israeli situation yesterday. So just to clarify, is it your view that the government has contributed to this situation, or you're not sure?
Well, that's a question, isn't it? I mean, the question is it the government's inability or unwillingness to spend more on defence a contributor to this review? Is the decisions that were made in the last 24 hours or so on Israeli ministers a contributor to this? I mean, these are questions that need to be answered by the government, not by me. But the questions I'm posing, and they need to be posed. Charles.
Yeah. Mr Taylor, there's a bit of disparity between the 3 to the election and what Pete Hegseth's saying of 3.5% of GDP. Who's right on that one?
Well, I tell you what, 3% is a hell of a lot closer to 3.5% than 2% is, Charles.
It is.
And so, you know, our commitment to defend our country, to have the sovereignty, the agility, the delivery, the people that are necessary alongside our allies, our commitment as a coalition is strong. We showed that at the last election. We'll continue to show that in the coming months and years. Certainly, whilst I'm in this role, that is a strong commitment. And I think what we're proposing, and we proposed at the last election, is a big step forward on where Labor is right now.
Just in response to that, what would you, if you were in the role right now of Defence Minister, what would you be doing that the current government isn't doing? Should Minister Marles, Minister Wong, the Prime Minister be in Washington right now making the case again?
I think it is incredibly important to have these face-to-face meetings, and this is why I've called on the Prime Minister to do whatever is necessary to meet with President Trump to discuss this issue, as well as others, of course, as quickly as possible. I think it matters. You know, these personal relationships, the personal engagement is really important. You know, I've had enough senior roles across the course of my career to understand how important this is. This government needs to get on with it. I think I've given you a very strong sense. I mean, we've got 3 years or whatever it's going to be between now and the next election to lay out our detailed defence policies, and I'm not going to do that today. But what I will say, Charles, is that I've given you a very strong sense of some of the areas where we'll be holding to the government to account and we'll be focusing on. I think this is a government that's been long on rhetoric and short on readiness. And that's not good enough. A couple more questions.
Just outside of defence, yes.
Yeah.
It's your first appearance.
We done with defence questions? Just one more, yeah, and we'll go to the other.
Trump did convince Congress to ask Australia for more money to support the production lines.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's in our best interest to do so and give that down payment on top of the $500 million that we already sent in January?
Well, I think we've got to do our bit to make sure Aukus is a success. We need the Americans to do their bit to make sure it's a success too. That's how these partnerships work. And so, you know, let's see what's in this review. I mean, I know as much as you do about this review. I learned about it in the last few hours. So let's see what comes out of it.
So just on the Liberal Party, we haven't had a chance to talk to you since you narrowly lost to Susan Lee. Do you still have a leadership baton in the knapsack?
You know what baton I've got in my knapsack? It's to be the Defence Minister of this country, and most importantly, in the short to medium term, to hold this government to account on its defence policies and its defence delivery. And as I look more at this portfolio, and of course I've observed it in my previous roles, I see a failure in terms of delivery, a failure in terms of readiness, a failure to our ADF from the government, and a failure to the Australian people. And we need to make sure that we're able to deliver. Now, I will work, as is the tradition, on a bipartisan basis with Richard Marles and others in the government to do everything we can to help on that delivery. And that's my focus, David, and it will continue to be my focus.
Just to follow on, were you disappointed not to get the leadership?
Well, you know, I'm delighted to be the Defence Shadow. And this is a really exciting role because it's important and it matters. And, you know, we see even today how important it is. It's important to our alliances. It's important to peace and security in our part of the world. And it's important to every Australian. So that's what I'm excited about, and it's wonderful to be back here with you all here in Canberra to talk about this. So,
On another Liberal Party matter, do you support the ongoing federal intervention into the New South Wales?
Well, I strongly support, as I've said many, many times, a reform that makes sure that the New South Wales Liberal Party is what it needs to be, that it's got a membership base that's empowered, that is excited about the Liberal Party, that is growing, not shrinking. And that reform process is enormously important, and I remain absolutely committed to that, as I have for many, many years. There's no secret about my position. And it's hard to see how we're going to get a reform process to happen without a continuation of the administration. So I think that's very important.
Last one.
Susan Lee's announced an election review. You've had a bit of time to reflect. How much do you blame yourself for the election result? The economic platform has been criticised of the Liberal Party. Do you blame yourself for the result?
Well, look, there's a review coming, and I'm not going to preempt the outcomes of that review, but I think there's you know, a huge job for us to do to hold this government, bad government, to account, not only on defence but on the economy and in other areas. And I tell you what, I'm going to be playing my role in doing that. I'll be contributing to the review, and I'll be interested in the outcomes of that, of course. But most importantly, we do need to do better. There's no question about that. All of us, everyone who is involved in the leadership of the party and everyone involved in the party over recent times, we've got to take a good hard look about how we can do better. And that's what I'll be doing. Yeah. All right, last one.
Just since that leadership vote for the Liberals, it looks like the Liberals have lost Bradfield, and a few senators who voted won't obviously be here for the upcoming term. It was a very tight vote the last time around. With these numbers changing slightly, does that make it more tempting to potentially consider going for the leadership sometime in this term of government?
No, look, my focus is, as I said, as I'm doing this job, as Defence Shadow. It's important, it matters. Australians need a government that is held to account. They need to understand that this country is being defended as is necessary in deeply uncertain times. So that'll be my focus. and it's great to be back focusing on the issues that matter to Australians, and I'll continue to do that. Good on you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.